Hey folks, I'm Chris and I'm your Commander Mechanic, here with an upgrade guide to the new C21 Precon Prismari Performance. If you want to pre-order any cards from Strixhaven or these C21 Precons, check out our affiliates. Our Canadian affiliate at Harry Tarantula, where you can use the code CMDR Space Mechanic at checkout to support the channel, or our international affiliate at TCG Player. You can find links to both in the descriptions below. So, with the full spoiler for the C21 Precon Prismari Performance now available, you can find the out-of-the-box list in the description below. I wanted to take a look at some of the new goodies and what I would do to make this Precon into a unique and strong deck. Our box legend is Zaffai, Thunder Conductor. I spoke on Zaffai a little bit in my first Strixhaven spoiler video, linked up top. But the legend I want us to pivot to in this build is for one of the legends inside the box, Veyran, Voice of Duality. This 3-mana 2/2 Efreet Wizard has Magecraft, which allows a cast or copied spell to give Veyran +1/+1 until end of turn. But the big benefit is that Veyran is a panharmonicon for spells. Whenever casting or copying a spell would cause a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, it happens twice. Which means, right off the bat, we get double Magecraft. So Veyran's ability actually gives them +2/+2 until end of turn. Not bad at all. But we can get really wild with a few includes to this deck. It won't take much to get the deck from focusing on casting big spells to focusing on spell slinging and copying spells. I'm going to take some inspiration from my Calamax the Stormsire build, linked up here. Both commanders focus on casting lots of spells, and Veyran will definitely fit right in the 99 of any Calamax build. Let's look at the mana base first. Once again, we'll be focusing on casting spells and staying on curve, so we need to cut out all of the comes into play tapped lands. The cycling deserts and lands need to come out, along with Prismari Campus. We'll also cut Reliquary Tower, largely because there are going to be some instances where we'll want to discard cards to hand size to get them in our yard. I'm all in favor of just replacing them with basics to keep on budget and on curve, though finding room for Steam Vents, Training Center, and Fiery Islet would make for an excellent ability to keep your mana production versatile. For our mana rocks, we're actually almost on point here. Great use of 2 mana rocks. But I would cut Letter of Acceptance and Hedron Archive. 3 mana is where we want to be at casting our commander, not a rock. And we're going to be streamlining this deck down to spells and things that trigger from spells, so efficiency is the name of the game. The 3 enchantments in the deck are great: Metallurgic Summonings, Sunbird's Invocation, and Swarm Intelligence. These are all spellcast triggers and all effects we want in the deck. These will make up the high end of our curve for sure. But I also want to find room for Thousand Year Storm. This is another on-cast trigger that then makes copies. Veyran with Thousand Year Storm out is a lot of math. The Precon will also come with 1 Planeswalker, Jaya Ballard. While we love this Pyromancer, we'd rather see her replaced with Ral, Storm's Conduit. Since Ral's static ability is a triggered ability on a permanent, our commander is going to really juice that, to the point where we're shocking opponents on every cast or copy. With Ral's ability to copy the next spell you cast, this can help us get a few copies quickly. One of the things we'll want to do with the deck is include more creatures with on-cast triggers, abilities that will help us refill our hands, deal damage to opponents, or build a small army. We're going to be spell slinging, but taking advantage of those spells. We'll cut out some of the higher end of the creatures like Inferno Project, Octavia Living Thesis, and Sly Instigator. We're not going to be about big creatures unless those creatures get us free spells or copies. We'll replace these big creatures with smaller ones that trigger on cast or copy. Gutter Snipe immediately comes to mind, dealing 4 damage to each opponent whenever we cast a spell. Along these same lines are Firebrand Archer and Electrostatic Field, each becoming mini Gutter Snipes with our commander out. These effects stack up very quickly to make it so each spell cast can be dealing 4, 6, or 8 damage every time to every opponent. Token generators on spellcast are crucial too. We want to be able to create an army to be both defensive and offensive. Young Pyromancer and Murmuring Mystic are excellent complements to Talran Sky Summoner, already in the list. One of the most important creatures we'll be wanting to include is Krark the Thumbless. Inside the 99, Krark acts as a double trigger with Veyran out, and can allow us to both copy and return a spell to our hands. Get your coins ready because it's time to get flipping. A 1 flip and a lost flip means you both copy the spell and return it to your hand. 2 lost flips mean you get to cast the spell again for another cast trigger, and 2 1 flips mean you get the original spell and 2 copies of it. That is value. We can include some smaller value creatures here too, like Spellgorger Weird or Goblin Electromancer, and card draw engines like Wavebreak Hippocamp, who will reward us with 2 cards whenever we cast our first spell on an opponent's turn. Jorian Ruin Diver can function similarly, but triggering whenever we cast our second spell each turn. We can include some new Strixhaven cards with Magecraft too, allowing us to double up on these juicy triggers. Archmage Emeritus springs to mind as an amazing way to keep your hand full and keep the spells coming. Speaking of spells, we'll want to rework some of what we're doing. The goal is to be able to cast and copy as many spells as possible, meaning mana is our big limiter. Unless we lean into free spells, spells with alternate casting costs, or versatile spells with flexible casting costs. Spells that refund their casting costs, like Snap or Frantic Search, are perfect, allowing us these free spells to cast more spells. The same can be said for actual free spells, like Mog Salvage or Submerge. Spells that can be cast for free if an opponent controls an island or a forest. In a 4-player game, it's rare that every land type is not represented. Spells that we can cast multiple times, like with Jumpstart or Flashback, are important parts of our plan. If we're running short on cards in hand, these are resources from the graveyard. Chemister's Insight or Lava Dart both serve useful purposes here, ensuring our graveyard contains potential. That leads me to some real finisher spells we should be looking at. X spells or spells that will get us more free value will be huge. Mizzix's Mastery can cast copies of every spell in our graveyard, leading to a massive trigger cascade, while Electro Dominance can dome an opponent and cast free spells from our hand. And Finale of Promise lets us recast an instant and sorcery card from the yard, with the ability to get multiple copies of them if we pay big mana. All stellar ways to close out a game. Now, if you're looking for some pricier upgrades, I'd lean into Counter Magic. There are a lot of free counter spells that we could include to trigger all of our permanents, but they are all on the pricey side. Force of Will, Force of Negation, and Pact of Negation, all a little hard on the wallet. Traditional cards with Storm on them could be big benefits too, and I'd look to Flusterstorm as a great reactive way to get lots of on-copy triggers and protect our stuff. Naturally, Cyclonic Rift would be a good add, if you're into that kind of thing, of course, as would a mana generator like Dockside Extortionist. I think this deck can perform perfectly fine without them, however. Spellslinger decks can typically do very well on a modest budget. So here's our upgraded list with Veyran at the helm. We're now much lower to the ground and casting spells on curve and often. We're not as focused on big spells, but instead multiple smaller spells. This is volume over value. We want to get free value in casting spells on every turn, draw cards to keep our hand full, and make sure we keep gas in the tank. Our win cons will either be combat with Veyran, who can get beefy fast, going wide with a token army, burning our opponents out, or via non-combat triggers with Goblin Electromancer and his friends. This makes us a versatile deck with good control, aggro, and board presence at all times. Very efficient for what is only a $25 upgrade. Let me know what you think about the Prismari Performance Precon below, and what you think of our tune-up and upgrades for this deck. Look forward to more like these in the days to come. As always, folks, good luck and have fun.